And we're pleased to welcome All-Pro linebacker, renowned photographer, Takeo Spikes is here. The second edition of Behind the Mask is out now. It's a fantastic book. It's your photography, looking at some of the great linebackers of all time. Let's get the website out there, behindthemaskbook.com. You got a big event in New York City tonight. And now let's talk some football. And I wish that we could talk about stuff on the field, but we have to start with off the field because you have the players and the players union. You have some of the owners and a handful of players meeting at the league offices this week. And, you know, Michael Bennett said something really interesting. I know you're a big fan of his. He said that before you can move forward at all with any discussions about anthems and about how they're going to go about talking about social injustice, you have to address Kaepernick first and why he doesn't have a job. Do you agree with that?
No, I do agree with it because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's the reason why we're here. That's the reason why we're talking about all of this, because Kaepernick started the awareness. And this is at the height of it where we are now. This is the biggest it has ever been. And so I agree with him on that, just simply because a lot of it, anytime you want to accomplish anything in life, you first have to start with just the acknowledgement of the reason why we are here. So I understood that.
How do you think Roger Goodell and the league have handled this situation overall? How would you evaluate that?
I thought it could have been, I thought they could have jumped out and been more proactive in the beginning. I think it would not have escalated to this point, but at the end of the day, we are here. So where we are now, bringing players in earlier this week, having the conversations, having guys who are true representations of the majority of the league, I thought it was it's a great start, you know, and I don't want it to be a great start, then it fizzles out. But I'm sure that's the reason why certain guys were brought into that room, because they are very well aware of what's going on, not only in our society, but in our communities. And that's the reason why the big uproar is going on right now.
You mentioned Kaepernick being the impetus for that, and I totally agree. He forced this conversation. But there's also been the side conversation about the national anthem, which sort of blurs the issue he was protesting for in the first place. And yesterday, Goodell said he knows how the fans feel about that, and he and the league think that players should stand as well. Do you think they're excluding a portion of the fan base and some of the players, obviously, as well, in saying that's how the fans feel as a blanket statement?
Well, like I said, you have to acknowledge where everybody stands, and everybody has an opinion, and I respect that. I'm okay with that. But at the end of the day, let's start with Colin Kaepernick and the reason why. And the thing that I hate from my personal side of it is we as the media, we have a tendency to try to change the narrative. Every time I talk about it, I'm not changing the narrative, because the narrative is he took a knee because of social inequality, social injustice, police brutality. And these are some of the things that in order for us to move forward, I say us because I still consider myself somewhat as a player, but what I do know, I am an African American. And the only reason why it wasn't me when you see police brutality or social injustice is because I wasn't there at that time. So I'm not too far removed to understand that, hey, just because I'm Takeo Spikes, it's not going to happen to me. No, it could have happened to anybody at that time. So I understand it, and that's my take on it.
It's really interesting when you see Goodell referencing the sponsors. Do you believe that is a big part of this? And is that something that the players should have to be acknowledging too, that sponsors may be leaving if guys continue to protest?
Well, that's the business side of the game. And if you are a true businessman, you have to acknowledge that fact, because at the end of the day, I can't get paid if my boss is not getting paid. And so we all understand that it's a chain of command, that things have to go down. But to go to show you that it hasn't went away, and guys know that it's still true to their heart, it goes to show you how important it is to them. Because at the end of the day, what we all have to realize, we may not be able to get change right now, but it's for generational change. And if you can spark that, have these tough conversations, have change come about, then ultimately your son, who's eventually coming up, who wants to be like you, he will benefit off of it. Your son's son will benefit off of it.
Obviously, the owners play a role in this. Jaguars owner Shad Khan said that President Trump is jealous of the NFL, and that inspired what he's been saying. What do you think is the motivation for Trump's attacks on the NFL?
Well, I mean, bottom line, people say, oh, the money is the root of all evil. No, it's the love of money is the root of all evil. And so, listen, 45, whatever you want to call it, I disagree with a lot of his statements. Sometimes I think he should stay in his place and make sure he tend to matters that really matter. We've had 2 catastrophes as far as natural disasters when it comes to weather. We still have a lot of people in Puerto Rico right now who need help, serious help, even in Houston. Just because the weather is cleared up, it doesn't mean that they don't need any more help. And so for me, I think when you look at football, football is just a small microcosm of life, at the end of the day. And so don't make it bigger than what it needs to be. But it goes back to money. And so I'm smart enough to understand that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have said a couple times, I think we need to be following the money a little bit more. And I actually think that's a way where the players could have a little leverage, because I don't think sponsors want to offend either side, if you will. So I don't think they're really going to go anywhere, even if they threaten to. It seems really different with how the NFL has been, I guess, reacting, the league, as opposed to the NBA. And the NBA even has a rule that says you have to stand, yet it doesn't seem like there's this sort of divide and just that divisiveness that we're seeing in the NFL. Even the Spurs put out a video, promoting equality. We know Greg Popovich has been outspoken against Trump. Why do you think there's a difference between how the NFL, and this has become so contentious, with the NBA, who seems to have navigated these waters a little easier?
Well, the easiest way that I can put it, when you're dealing with the NFL, and employees, when you're dealing with players, you're dealing with damn near 2,000 players. So is it really possible to get 2,000 minds, come from 2,000 different backgrounds, to be on the same page with the same answer? No, that's not reality. Compared to basketball, you may have 12 to 13 on a roster, a couple of hundred overall in the NBA. And so when you look at the guys who are the biggest influencers, those are the guys who are getting paid more. Those are the guys who can dictate, even though I have a GM, I want this guy on my team. Mm-hmm. And so that's the reason why you're going to have more of a chain of command of more influencers in the game of basketball who can drive that narrative the way that they want to.
You think NBA players feel more like they have an individual voice, and NFL players can feel more like a cog in the machine, per se?
No, I think we both have the same equal platform, but the reality of it is we just have more players. And so you can't, it's no different than you going to a Ford Motor Company, right in the basis to where in the manufacturer, and you trying to get everybody on that same page, speaking the same language, wanting them to believe the same thing. It's too many people. Everybody got vested interest. Is it right, wrong? That's up to them at the end of the day. So I'm just saying, when you look at from a pure number standpoint, of course it's going to be easier because the influencers really drive the decision making in the NBA.
I also think they're working on different timelines. If you are an owner of an NFL team, you can always afford to take the long view. I'm talking 15, 20 years. Most NFL players did not have the career you had, not 15 years in the league. They're in maybe 2 years, maybe 2.5. They are on a more urgent timeline. We mentioned your book, Behind the Mask. Now, these are some gorgeous photographs that you have taken, really full of emotion. I want to ask you about something that's a little less gorgeous right now. And I'm going to use that as a transition to talk a little bit about Gordon Hayward just for a moment, because he's likely to miss the season due to this gruesome injury. What's the worst injury you've ever seen?
The worst injury I've ever seen was, that was pretty close. I would probably say that's the worst injury that I've seen. But the worst injury that I've been around at that date to where it was completely life-changing was an ex-teammate of mine when I played in Buffalo. Kevin, he broke his neck.
I know who you're talking about.
Kevin Everett.
Kevin Everett. He almost was paralyzed.
Yeah, he was almost paralyzed. And he was actually paralyzed, and he had, God willing, everything came together, and he was able to learn how to walk and everything. But that was so scary, and it really slowed everything down and put it into perspective, understanding that as a football player in the National Football League, or just period, your window of opportunity is so small. Even though you can be on top of the world 1 minute, it makes you realize you have to take advantage of the monetary opportunities when it's presented to you.
It's so crazy. I remember that game, and also there was a very small detail where there was a new medical innovation that said if you have a spinal injury, instead of putting heat on it, which you always should have done in the past, it was put cold on it. The doctors in Buffalo did that and saved his life, or his ability to recover. Sorry about that.
Now, when you're interviewing all these guys for the book, all these linebackers, you talk about an injury like that, and of course we know what we know now about brain injuries. How often do former players talk about the after effects of playing football?
I mean, now that I'm a former player, I mean, it probably comes up, but it never comes up in the conversation of, oh man, you remember this injury? It's more so, I know with me, but when I get out of the bed every morning, I'm dragging my feet because my back kills me, you know, every day. So it's more so in that nature, guys joking around with each other. Come on, man, you need your cane today? You know, just trying to motivate each other and get you moving a little bit.
I know players have talked about that they want to check in with each other a little bit more.
Yeah.
Now they've seen some of the effects of the, you know, repeated hits to the head. Do you find you're doing that? I mean, you're photographing some of the greatest linebackers. Do you also find that you're calling guys that you used to play with just to say, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And God rest his soul, Cortez Kennedy, he died, and they came up with the initiative. I can't remember. I think it's the 96 check, if I'm not mistaken. But take time out of your day to check on one of the guys who you played with, and you would be surprised the type of reaction that you get. Not necessarily saying that it's bad, but a lot of times guys are just lonely. And we started playing this game at 7 years old, 7, 8, 9 years old. And if you're fortunate enough to play as long as I did, I retired at 36, so 29 years out of my life, I was playing organized football. It's always a good thing to be able to talk, because we don't get that anymore once we leave that locker room. People ask me all the time, do you miss playing? No. But what do you miss? I miss being around the guys. I miss being able to be in an environment to where I can just say what I want to say, and nobody is looking at me as if I have a malice intent trying to hurt somebody's feelings. It's having truthful dialogue, black, white, Hispanic, and everybody come from different places, but we up under one roof trying to achieve one common goal.
You probably don't miss it because you're so busy. I mean, you've got the Behind the Mask book, the NFL films feature on your photography. What got you into photography?
Well, I was always infatuated with chasing greatness. That was one. Two, people ask me all the time, well, how did you achieve this? How did you attain so much in the period of time when you played? So I said I would document my story through my book, through my photography. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? I can make it even a little bit better by bringing in other Hall of Fame linebackers to share their moment of greatness of how did they become that outlier. And so that's how I came up with the concept, and it took me 2 years to complete. I went around the country, different places, Chuck McNarick, Mike Singletary, Derek Brooks,
Cornelius Bennett,
so many guys, man, and had a great time. Harry Carson right here in the Big Apple, spent the day with him and just picking their minds and their brains, because I feel like we're at a time right now to where it's very important that, you know, when people look at athletes, celebrities, or if you're on TV all the time, we get instant credibility, but at the same time, sometimes kids want to be us, they aspire to be us, but they think, oh man, he was just blessed with that opportunity, or he was blessed with that skill, but that's not true. And so part of the reason why I came out with this book is to show people that it was the defining moment. Everybody has those defining moments. And it's important that you realize when you have that moment at the time. And then it's even more important to put the blinders on, focus, and challenge yourself to say, you know what, regardless of whatever may happen, I'm going to give it everything I got, and I'll just see where I end up.
No, you're a motivational speaker. I feel like I can get up right now.
Well, let's get up and play.
We're in the moment, though. We're in the moment.
Go.
Okay, but there's always that kind of one, maybe a photo or something that would spark an emotion in you to make you say, I want to do that. Is there a famous sports photo that you ever looked at that you said, man, I want to be able to take my audience to the place where I am right now?
I don't think it was necessarily one photo, but I will tell you this. It started with my mother. And my mother, she was great at capturing the moment. But the more you look at that moment she captured, it was blurry. And so what really got me hooked, it was like, Mom, give me the camera. Let me show you how to take a picture. So it was boom, boom. Before I knew it, I was hooked. And so that's what really kind of drove me into the game of photography.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Amazing. Of course, the book, it's called Behind the Mask. You can see it right there. BehindTheMaskBook.com is where you can find more information. Got the big party tonight of really some phenomenal photographs. My favorite is the Kevin Green at the back with his kids sitting on the dock. That's pretty cool.
I had so much fun shooting Kevin Green, and want to urge everybody, especially tonight at the DL, 95 Delancey Street, come out, going for a great cause. Celebrating another good friend of mine. It's a charitable component with that. Two-time Reds, former NFL 10-year vet, also played a year here with the New York Giants. And we're teaming up with him to give part of the proceeds to his foundation, which is called Beyond the Burrows. It's been in existence for 10 years now. So we want to give these kids an opportunity for more opportunities to get scholarships to go to school. And that's exactly what he's been doing over the past 10 years.
BehindTheMaskBook.com. If Nick Saban was like, I want you to come shoot my portrait as an Auburn alum, what would you say?
Nick, how fast you want me there? I need to come and talk to your team. Give them a copy of Behind the Mask. It's all about being an outlier.
I can't believe what I'm hearing. I thought you'd say, no way, no how, I'm going to take a picture of an Alabama guy.
How did we start this conversation off? It's all about the money.
Takeo Spikes, thank you so much. Congratulations again on the book. Have fun at the party tonight. Good things for a good cause.
Thank you.